Madam Chair,
Yeah.
it's total conflict at all times, because when you're talking about your local board, it's
Yeah.
the total local board. And when you're sitting there, irrespective of what they're talking about, it's still part of the local board, and you will have a role as far as that town centre manager.
So,
for it.
councillor, I just checked, this is, I'm not too sure if this is in the purview of this piece of legislation. This is probably the guidelines that we have around who can stand and who can't stand. Council staff have to take leave or resign or whatever. You can't be, you know, I presume you can't be a staff member and a councillor. So
if you are appointed as an elected, sorry, if you're a staff member and you're elected to Auckland Council, to a board or governing body, you need to resign your role at the council. And if you are a current employee and standing in an election, usually around 3 months out, we do ask you to take a leave of absence.
So
you can be a CCO employee and on a local board.
So rather than try and resolve this issue now, I think we just need to pick up Councillor Anai's point about that continuum of what constitutes conflict of interest. What is a contract? You know, I don't know, a town centre person is holding a contract that's funded, but we do have elected members who have businesses who contract to council and then they declare a conflict of interest. So Councillor and I, we need to have a look at whether it's a conflict of interest issue or if it's something that precludes you from being able to stand. We can't just deal with that through this.
Okay, but the town centre manager is not a council employee.
No, but they have a contract that is connected, so
deliver.
that's why I'm saying this needs to be dealt with via the contract conflict of interest issue.
And that's the point I was trying to raising, is a total conflict, because they're there all the time, and a town centre is part of the local board.
But we can't put that, that wouldn't be in legislation, that would be dealt with on that
But it's sort of-
individual's basis. Councillor Watson.
Reassuring to hear that. I wouldn't like to see the situation at Rodney repeated, where the council head of PR took a couple of weeks' leave to run the election campaign for about 4 candidates, and then went back to work to serve those same candidates.
Really?
Yes, but that was Rodney. I just wanted to just reinforce that notion of breadth of representation, particularly as it goes to local boards that have got subdivisions, where if you have someone that's doubling up, effectively they take out 25% of the representation in that ward. So if there's only 4 people and they're on 2 boards and one of them's a subdivision, they were taking out 1 and 4, which is not desirable at all, and that's happened a couple of times on the shore. So in a small representatives, they're having a marked effect on a subdivision. So that's not going to be happening anymore, and that's good.
Okay. So I think we're getting there. Councillor Filipaina, we need someone to move the recommendation.
Oh,
You happy to move?
both of us did that.
Second?
earlier.
Okay. So I've got Councillor Filipaina to speak and then Councillor Quack.
Just a question, ladies. When I stood in 2003, my understanding was that I could only stand in the area that I had a home in, or I was a ratepayer. But that's no longer the case.
Never has been.
Can live anywhere.
Oh,
You could stand for Invercargill.
Hang on, let's just have...
thank you. I was just talking to the ladies, but
Anna,
Welcome you in
Oh, exactly.
I can see we're just about at the lunch break, councillors. Come on,
No,
let's
that's
finish,
right.
let's finish
I
this
thought it was
item.
that. Sorry, my bad.
You are bad,
Yeah.
but we love you. Anna.
So you can stand in a different area, but again, you do need to show in your campaign materials that you don't live in the area.
Not
That
anymore.
is new.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
It's changed now.
Oh, has it?
In the
Okay.
candidate handbook, it gets declared too, doesn't
Okay.
it?
No, they're changing it now.
Councillor
Oh, changing
Quacks.
it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Invercargill would welcome Councillor Filipaina.
Don't care where, as long as you're there.
Madam Chair, another issue that comes to mind, if we are concerned about councillors or local board members not being able to devote their time if they're on more than one board or whatever, I wonder if the same should apply to those councillors or local board members who currently serve on the health boards. It's just as relevant if we're concerned about the time they might spend away from their duties as representing their local constituents maybe the health board question should be raised as well.
No. It's only a couple of
Councillor, I
years.
think that
I
that's
agree.
an entirely separate entity. People make their own choices.
Or on other elected bodies, such as licensing.
One afternoon
Okay.
a month, come on.
Councillors, I think we
that's
may be
ridiculous.
straying a
We ought
bit.
to look at
Next
that.
thing they won't be able to have a
It's
business
relevant.
either.
Well, I'm just going to say, are we then going to prevent people who have some employment from standing for council? So it's been moved
And they haven't
and
got a
seconded.
directorship on
I think
AT.
we're getting there. Councillor Casey?
We were going to come back to the idea
were,
of a limit.
that's right.
And
Yep.
as far as I'm aware, the limit so far has been 3 in the Auckland region that someone has stood for and been elected to 3 boards. Is that right?
Yes.
In the previous term, we had a local board member on 3 boards.
That's right. So that's the most I can recall anybody sitting for. Should
And a
that be
health
our
board.
limit? I think that's actually too much.
And a health board.
And the health board.
I would advocate for. I'm happy to take guidance, but I think that's too much. So 2 boards,
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, we're promoting
So,
one
so let's,
One sits
so-
well with me, but
submission.
It's already
promotes
been
one.
moved and
So
seconded.
so we're clear that you can only serve on 1 board. Councillor Casey, the point you're making, I think that's important, is looking at some limitation in people being able to stand for the entire rainbow array of everything. You know, I mean, obviously standing for 21 local boards will cost a fortune, but someone may be prepared to give it a crack. Do we want to limit the number of boards someone can stand for? Not serve, but stand for.
So we haven't looked at that, and again, we haven't canvassed the local boards on that, and hasn't been in our previous submissions. The need to declare how many positions you're standing for should show the voters how
Might give you a
serious
whole
you might be
page.
to the
That's a good
particular,
marketing ploy.
the local board that they are voting for.
That's right.
So maybe a little bit late in the piece to add it in because we haven't canvassed it, but if it appears in the candidate booklet, it would certainly show that someone's having a bit of a lash. Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, the public aren't silly. They'll look at that and go, actually, if they really want those people, they'll vote them, but they won't. But I don't think it's an issue of standing. It's whether you actually get elected there. You've got to make the choice. You've got to choose the one you want. That's the end of it. It's a bit like I stood for local board and councillor. I got into both and I made the choice to be a councillor.
Yeah.
And there's no other choice. You can't be both. And so I think it's just, you know, I think what we've got here is pretty clear.
We've
Because the
canvassed
outcome
it
is we
well.
don't want people elected 3 boards, but whether they put their head in the ring, there's already limitations on what people can
Hopefully
stand
we're
for.
starting to bring a bit of sense to this. I'm going to put the recommendation moved by Councillor Filipaina, seconded by Councillor Penrose. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And I'm going to move a adjournment for lunch until 1:45. Lunch.